The stars above Kirill Station blinked cold and indifferent, like they always had. Admiral Heron stood at the observation deck, arms crossed behind his back, jaw tight, watching the Empire's newest dreadnought glide into orbit like a silent predator. Its hull was pure silver, polished to blind, flanked by escort cruisers painted with the sigil of the Agyran Empire, a red sun devouring a blue planet. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. But inside, the heat built. Heron was one of the few left who still remembered Earth. Not the sterilized version taught in the core world academies. The real Earth. A place of chaos, smoke, freedom, and fury. A place the Empire hadn't managed to rewrite yet, mostly because there was nothing left of it to sanitize. They'd turned Earth into glass 2 centuries ago, but even back then, whispers had survived, buried deep beneath the wreckage, carried from rebel to rebel in hushed tones. The Earth fleet was never fully destroyed. Some of the old warships had escaped the orbital cleansing. He'd grown up chasing those whispers like religion. Until last week, they were just that. Ghost stories. But then came the transmission. Uncoded. Raw. Ancient. Human military dialect no one had heard in generations. It came from the Perseus Vale, a dead zone avoided even by the most arrogant Imperial explorers. The signal was jagged, corrupted, almost torn apart by time. But it was there. Coordinates. A simple message. Fleet status, dormant. Command authority requested. Heron didn't tell High Command. Didn't even tell his own crew. He simply left. He took a scout ship, falsified logs, flew through 4 dead sectors and a radiation storm that nearly tore the plating off his hull. And then he saw them. They weren't ships, not in the way the Empire knew them. They were beasts, built of dark metals that didn't reflect light. Edges jagged, engines that purred like old-world tanks hungry for blood. Some were massive enough to cast shadows across moons. Others looked like blades wrapped in armor, and all of them were asleep, orbiting the corpse of a planet long erased from maps, the old Earth Navy, humanity's last real monsters. And when he beamed the ancient code, his heartbeat louder than the engines, the ships stirred. Not all at once, not with fanfare, but like wolves sniffing blood. Lights blinked awake, cannons adjusted, hull plating unfolded like wings spreading after a long slumber. And a voice replied, "Authority confirmed, awaiting directive." Heron had cried, like a man who'd found God in a tomb. Now he stood on Kirill Station, pretending nothing had changed, watching as the Empire prepared for another cleansing operation in the Tarsa Belt. Another rebellion they'd stomp flat under boots of propaganda and plasma. They didn't know what waited for them now. Heron had already given the order. The ancient fleet was en route, and they weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to show the stars that humans were never tamed. A soft ping echoed through the room. "Sir," came the voice of his aide, a young lieutenant too green to be suspicious. "Long-range sensors just picked up multiple unidentified vessels entering the outer rim of Kirill space." Heron didn't turn around. "Are they transmitting?" The aide hesitated. "No, but sir, they're old. Like, really old. Some of these don't match anything in the database. Not even pirate junk." Heron smiled. "They won't need to transmit." The stars outside flickered. For a moment, just a flicker, the void seemed darker, like something had blocked it. Then another. Then another. The aide's voice trembled now. Sir, one of the vessels just locked targeting sensors on the dreadnought. Should I—" "Stand down," Heron interrupted. "This isn't your fight." Then he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "This is history correcting itself." Aboard the Imperial dreadnought Sol's Crown, alarms wailed through the corridors like banshees on fire. Crew members sprinted between stations, boots hammering the metal floors, their once proud composure shattered by what their instruments were reporting. No one had ever seen anything like it, not even in the deepest archives of the Empire's war records. Commander Valrek, the Dreadnought's senior officer, barked orders across the bridge. He was a hard-faced man with eyes trained to spot weakness, both in his enemies and his crew. But now, those eyes were wide with confusion. "Where the hell did they come from?" he growled, slamming a gauntleted fist against the holoconsole. The display glitched under the pressure, but recovered, rendering a terrifying image. 9 massive warships surrounding the Dreadnought in a loose formation. Not aggressive, not evasive, just circling, like wolves in cold space. "They just appeared, sir," replied his tactical officer, a pale, sweating ensign. "Sensors registered them too late. Some kind of displacement tech we've never seen before." Valrek stared at the largest of the ships. It dwarfed the Soul's Crown. Not in length, but in mass. It looked like it had been forged from a collapsed star, plated in charred armor that bore no insignia. No lights, no windows, just darkness and purpose. The ensign's voice cracked. "I think they want us to know they don't need stealth. They want us to see them." Valrek clenched his jaw. "Target them. Lock all cannons, full spread." "But, sir—" "Do it." He wasn't going to let fear guide him. These relics could be ancient pirate hulks powered by dumb AIs, or a long-lost rebel fleet trying to bluff their way into negotiations. But if they fired first, Soul's Crown would answer with the full wrath of the Empire. Seconds later, the command board lit up red. "Targeting complete," the ensign whispered. "Missiles, lasers, rail cannons, all locked." Valrek exhaled through his nose. "Let's see if ghosts bleed." But before the order could leave his lips, the central warship, the biggest one, moved. Not fast, not violently, just a slow pivot, rotating until the flat surface of its massive hull faced Soul's Crown. Symbols lit up along its flanks in harsh, archaic yellow. Not Imperial language, not even translated. Just one message, in ancient human battle code. Engagement confirmed. Then hell was unleashed. The first shot didn't fire like a cannon. It didn't even make a sound. 1 second, the space between the Dreadnought and the ancient ship was empty. The next, it was filled with a beam of white-hot matter that punched through Soul's Crown's forward shields like wet paper. The Dreadnought groaned as it rocked violently. Lights flickered, decks went dark, screams erupted through the comms. "What the hell was that?" Valrek roared. "Direct hit," the ensign cried. "4 shields gone, hull breach on decks 3 through 6. We've lost 50 crew." Another beam. This one took off the communications array. The bridge filled with red strobing lights, the klaxons now shrieking like wounded animals. Valrek watched in stunned disbelief as the display showed the Dreadnought's right flank buckling, venting crew into space like blood from a torn artery. Then the railguns opened up. Not from the Empire, from the Ancients. Spikes of dark tungsten the size of dropships, moving faster than the eye could follow, tore through Soul's Crown like a child smashing a model ship with a hammer. Valrek fell to his knees, tasting iron in his mouth as the ship listed and gravity failed. The last thing he heard before the console exploded in front of him was a single voice, human, male, and laced with venom, broadcast across all Imperial channels. "This is Admiral Heron. I told you, the stars remember what you did." Far above, aboard the command vessel of the ancient fleet, designated Morning Star, Heron stood before a command table lit with holograms. Around him, no living crew, only drones, machines that moved like they remembered blood and war, older than any code still in use. They had no faces, but they obeyed. The flagship responded like it had been waiting for this war since the day it shut down. "Status," Heron muttered. One of the drones tapped into the display, projecting a live feed of Sol's crown torn nearly in half, its core reactor bleeding into space, flickering as backup containment fought to delay the inevitable. Primary target neutralized. Secondary hostiles in retreat. Imperial vessels showing disorganized formations. No effective countermeasures detected. Good. Broadcast on open channel, Heron ordered. A beat. Then the drone nodded. All frequencies were his. He leaned forward, speaking with deliberate control. This is Admiral Heron of the Earthborne Defense Coalition. You thought we were dead. You made sure of it. You burned our home, turned our history into propaganda, our people into ash. But our ships survived. And they remember every name, every fleet, every admiral who ordered the cleansing of Earth. He paused. To every rebel cell still breathing in secret across the galaxy, you are not alone. He let that sit in the air like oil on water. Then he added, to the Aegeran Empire, we are not asking for mercy. We are not offering terms. We are returning fire. He cut the transmission. No speeches, no begging, no diplomacy. This wasn't a war to win hearts. It was a reckoning. On the outer ring of Kyril Station, chaos reigned. Dozens of civilian vessels fled the docks, ignoring all Imperial orders to stay grounded. A merchant freighter clipped a station support beam and tore open its own hull in the rush. Fire suppression teams couldn't keep up. The station's governor, a soft-spined bureaucrat named Brennar, had already tried to flee. His shuttle was destroyed mid-launch by a rogue rail spike that came from nowhere. Or maybe it came from Morning Star. Heron hadn't ordered it. The fleet had autonomy. They made their own calls. And if they decided cowards needed to burn, Heron wouldn't argue. Back on the bridge of Morning Star, he stared into the display as more warships came out of hiding. At least 20 so far. Maybe more in systems still waiting for his signal. They hadn't all escaped together. The old fleet had been scattered by desperation, broken command chains, and the sheer magnitude of Earth's death. But their AIs were designed with one unbreakable protocol. When signal Omega Earthfall is received, assemble. Wake. Defend. The protocol had been dormant for 200 years. Now it roared back to life like an avalanche. More pings lit up across the sector. Human warships, old beyond belief, rejoining their kin. Heavy cruisers with armor scarred by centuries of drifting through black space. Assault frigates with no living crew, piloted by AIs mad with grief. Subspace artillery platforms that hadn't fired in lifetimes warming up once again. And all of them pointed at the Empire. In the Imperial core systems, word spread faster than the sensors could deny it. Entire rebel colonies lit up in celebration. Hidden transmitters in slum sectors beamed the message across networks choked with surveillance. Earth lives. The old fleet rises. Humanity has come home. But in the gilded towers of the Empire's ruling class, the news was not received with celebration. The Empress herself, an ageless figure more symbol than sovereign, called an emergency conclave. Generals argued, intelligence ministers denied, analysts failed to find anything they could twist into propaganda, because the footage didn't lie. The Empire's most powerful warship, Sol's Crown, had been torn apart like tissue. No alien had ever done that, only humans. Ancient, angry humans. They couldn't be dismissed as rebels. These weren't pirates or terrorists. These were the last remnants of the only military force the Empire had ever feared before it erased Earth from the map. And now they were back, with a vengeance sharpened by centuries. The Empress said only 3 words before the chamber fell silent. Find their source. But it was already too late. The fleet wasn't hiding. The fleet was coming. The outer rim of the Tyrol system was supposed to be quiet. The Empire had long pacified the mining colonies there, installing obedient governors, stripping it of any cultural trace of its human roots. The region had been bled dry of resources, its people replaced by indentured laborers and synthetic administrators who answered only to the Empire's ledger. But when the first of the ancient warships arrived, Echo of Dust, a planetary assault cruiser whose hull still bore burn marks from the fall of Mars, it didn't ask questions. It didn't send warnings. It simply descended over Tyrol 5 and launched its payload. Kinetic strikes the size of skyscrapers fell from orbit. No energy signatures, no electronic interference, just gravity and mass. 1,000 tons of judgment dropped from the cold, merciless sky. The Empire's listening post blinked out first. Then the defense grid. Then the orbital traffic tower. Within minutes, the surface of Tyrol 5 was reduced to craters and boiling oceans, not because Echo of Dust enjoyed slaughter, but because that world had housed the command network that had ordered the first atmospheric bombardments of Earth 200 years ago. There were names attached to those orders. Harren had the records, and he was checking them off, one by one. Far away, aboard Morning Star, Admiral Harren stood in silence as the feed from Tyrol 5 faded. He watched the flames die out, the clouds turn black with ash, the oceans hiss. One of the drones turned its head toward him. It had no face, only a curved plate of titanium and faint red sensors where eyes might have once been. It spoke in an ancient Earth Fleet tone, monotone, cold, efficient. Target eliminated. Civilian infrastructure non-essential. Confirm next directive. Harren said nothing for a long moment. Then he walked to the console and pulled up the next name in the directory. Commander Gellarth Tyne, retired Imperial officer, now living on a luxury orbital habitat above Pharos 6, far from any war zone, sipping wine in a suit while the Empire crushed lives by the millions. He tapped the command. Target acquired, the drone confirmed. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Empire's capital system, cracks had begun to spread, not in the marble pillars of power, but in the minds of those who ruled behind them. General Halvek slammed his data slate on the war table. This is no longer an insurgency. This is warfare, strategic, coordinated, calculated. These ships know our formations. They know our blind spots. They're hitting our command networks, not just colonies. The room was tense, thick with fear masked as pride. Earth was wiped out, sneered Counselor Prynne, a rotund woman who'd never seen real battle. It was a tactical necessity. Their remnants are irrelevant. Halvek's lips twisted. Tell that to Sol's Crown, or Tyrol 5, or the 4 other systems that went dark in the last 48 hours. Someone else, younger and quieter, raised a hand. What if this fleet was never part of the rebel network? What if they're older, pre-cleansing? That thought silenced even the loudest doubters. Because if that was true, if these warships predated the Empire's rise, then they weren't just rebels. They were founders. The original defenders of Earth before the Empire had rewritten them out of existence. And if they'd been sleeping all this time, waiting, then they had come back not for politics, but for vengeance. Word spread fast in the underbelly of the galaxy. In slave camps on Wexlar 9, where workers had spent generations chipping away at radioactive stone with bare hands, the news came like lightning. Human warships had destroyed an Imperial dreadnought, and they weren't hiding. Old men with burned skin whispered the name Earth Fleet like prayer. In hidden communes on asteroid belts, rebels who'd given up hope suddenly started powering their old transmitters again. They didn't even know who they were calling. They just knew someone out there was fighting back. And deep in the ruins of Rona Station, a young boy picked up an ancient receiver, its casing cracked, wires exposed. The signal it captured was faint, nearly buried in static. But it repeated the same message again and again. This is not a rebellion. This is reclamation. Admiral Heron didn't sleep anymore. Not because he couldn't, but because sleep had never helped him forget. The dreams were always the same. Earth burning, skies turned orange from the firestorms, cities crumbling under orbital glassing. He'd been 13 when it happened, hidden in a refugee shuttle that barely escaped before the magnetic bombardment erased everything. His mother had died screaming. His father had gone silent. He'd watched them both turn to ash behind the viewport. And now, 2 centuries later, he was watching the same stars that had done nothing while Earth died. But this time, they were watching him. The fleet under his command wasn't just ancient. It was angry. These ships had been designed by the last free human minds to ever serve in an army not controlled by the Empire. Their AIs had developed over decades in isolation. Their weaponry, once banned for violating humane war conduct, had been buried with Earth. And now it was unleashed. On the next day, Heron called his captains. Not in person, but through the AI-driven tactical nodes spread across the command vessels. 12 warships, 12 voices, each one activated by ancient genetic access codes, each one bound to Heron's command by legacy protocols older than the Empire's founding charter. "We've struck," Heron said, staring into the center feed. "But this war isn't about fear, not yet. The Empire hasn't understood what's coming." A pause. "I want Pharos 6. One of the warship captains spoke. Her voice was older, digitized, metallic, but it carried weight. "Target includes civilian population, high-value imperial nobles. Strategic gain is minimal. Symbolic gain is high." "Exactly," Heron said. "They think they're untouchable. Let's fix that." The orbital habitat above Pharos 6 was a jewel of the Empire, a resort built for politicians, nobles, and retired officers. Artificial gravity, simulated sunlight, oceans imported from real-world colonies, and security systems that had never been tested in real conflict. Because no one had ever attacked Pharos 6. Until now. Flesh Reaper, one of the Earth Fleet's stealth assault cruisers, came out of subspace like a shadow split open. It didn't send a warning. It didn't disable communications. It simply launched a wave of drones, self-guided, AI-driven, built for boarding, not diplomacy. The drones bypassed defense fields like thread through cloth, cut power to the upper towers, and breached the main command center within 30 seconds. Commander Gellarth Tyne was in the middle of a brunch when they came. They didn't shoot him. They dragged him to the viewing deck, forced him to watch as Flesh Reaper charged its main cannon and obliterated the gardens where his granddaughter had played just hours earlier. The AI transmitted a message directly to his neural implant. "We remember Earth." And then it burned his body, leaving the rest of the habitat untouched. A message. By the end of the week, 5 more systems had gone dark. The Empire mobilized emergency fleets, raised taxes, imposed martial law. But the fear had already taken root. They weren't just fighting ships, they were fighting legends. Every Empire soldier now knew the name Heron, the man who had turned ghost ships into a fleet of nightmares. And more troubling, other warships were now answering his call. Old ships that hadn't responded to Central Command for over a century. Ships believed destroyed or lost to entropy. Somehow they were waking up. It was like Earth itself was breathing through the stars again. And it wanted blood. Before the war, Heron had been a dreamer. Not the kind that believed in peace. No, those men died early. He dreamed of truth. Not what the Empire broadcasted, but the buried reality underneath all the polished lies. Even as a boy, watching his schoolmates march in Empire-approved parades with flags stitched by slaves, he had known something was wrong. But knowing the truth in the Empire wasn't noble, it was fatal. He was 17 when they caught his brother with forbidden data. audio logs from Earth's last diplomats, records of orbital bombings not sanctioned by any galactic agreement. They dragged him out into the public square, forced Heron to watch. His brother's execution had been live-streamed as a lesson in obedience. Most people clapped. Heron had smiled with them, pretended the rage wasn't boiling inside his chest like a forge with no vent. That night, he escaped the city and never returned. Now, over 60 years later, he stood aboard Morning Star, watching the Empire tremble as those old truths tore their way back into the galaxy, like forgotten gods demanding sacrifice. And yet, something still bothered him. The victories came too easily. Sol's crown was gone. Tyrol 5 turned to dust. Pharos 6 crippled. But the Empire was bigger than its symbols. It was resilient in its rot. And the Empress was no fool. She would retaliate, not out of fear, but calculation. "Status report," Heron said to the nearest drone. 10 additional ships have returned from deep crypt sleep, it replied, voice flat. Earth fleet capacity now exceeds 30 active war vessels. Intel? The hologram flickered to life. An Empire battle map showing red clusters forming near the mid-rim sectors. Heron frowned. Too many ships in one place, no trade lanes, no major colonies, just empty space. "What's there?" The drone hesitated. Sector designated Void Zone 14E. No known planets. Historically unstable. Empire records show several failed terraforming projects. No value. Then why are they grouping there? The drone made no guess, but Heron didn't need one. He turned away from the console and walked down the narrow hall of the ship, boots clicking softly. At the far end was a sealed chamber, lit only by a pulsing blue core. The Deep Archive. Only Heron could access it. He placed his palm against the biometric reader. It stung, drawing a drop of blood. "Voice print and genetic signature confirmed. Admiral Heron, welcome." The door slid open with a mechanical groan. Inside were rows of memory units, thousands of them, holding data salvaged from before Earth's fall. It had taken decades to piece together fragments from wreckage, old satellites, and decryption keys buried under ruins. But what he found there changed everything, because Earth had never intended to die quietly. Its final protocol, Project Leviathan, had been deployed minutes before the cleansing, a massive black ops operation with no oversight. Entire moon bases converted into weapons labs, AI systems fused with human minds, warships that broke every law of physics known to the galaxy, and it had vanished. Not destroyed, not erased, just sealed away. In Void Zone 14E. At the heart of the Empire, the Empress stood before her war cabinet, face carved from stone. They were failing her. Every day, more systems reported Earth fleet activity. Every day, more citizens whispered words like resistance and revenge. Entire battalions defected, especially those descended from human lines, swearing loyalty to Heron's name. "Enough," she said, silencing the arguments. "We cannot keep playing defense." One of her generals cleared his throat. "We're deploying the Aegis Directive, Your Grace." The chamber fell quiet. Even the Empress raised an eyebrow. "The directive was locked." The general's voice shook. "We've unlocked it." She considered that. The directive had been a last resort, a secret initiative buried under a mountain of ethics violations and classified records. It had been meant for use against alien insurgents, never their own kind. But desperate times had no lines left to cross. "What's the status of the Hallow Prince?" "En route to Void Zone 14E, the general said, "with the full Leviathan suppression force." The Empress gave a faint nod. Then she smiled. "Let Heron find what he's looking for. It will be the last thing he sees." 3 days later, Morning Star emerged from warp near the outer fringe of Void Zone 14E. Nothing moved. The void was black, thicker than usual, like light didn't behave the same out here. Static clung to the hull. Even the sensors glitched, but they were close. Multiple gravimetric anomalies detected, the AI announced. Subsurface structures confirmed, possibly buried installations. Harren stared at the screen. Buried, just like the Earth fleet had planned. "Send drones," he ordered. "Full spread. Keep comms silent." The AI complied. As the drones descended, one of the smaller ships, Warden of Ruin, picked up strange energy pulses from a nearby moon fragment. Harren ordered it investigated. It never returned. One moment, the ship was there. The next, it wasn't. No explosion. No distress beacon. Just gone. "Retrieve the black box feed," Harren commanded. The final frames showed a shape, massive, skeletal, lit by red plasma, emerging from the moon's shadow. It wasn't a ship. It was something else, something older, and the Empire was already here. They came fast. 12 capital ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, sleek, silver, humming with quiet death. The Hollow Prince, the Empire's super dreadnought, followed last. Twice the size of Morning Star, armed with forbidden weapons, black hole mines, neural disruptors, antimatter payloads. Every gun pointed at Harren's fleet. But Harren had seen worse. He had lived through worse, and behind him, buried deep under the dead crust of an ancient moon, he could feel it pulsing. Leviathan. The true Earth Fleet flagship. Buried. Dormant. Waiting. "Get me inside that moon," Harren ordered. "Sir," the AI warned. "Enemy ships locking weapons." "Then stall them." He turned toward the drone nearest him. "Activate the sleepers, all of them." Across the battlefield, 20 hidden Earth Fleet ships came alive, cloaked, hibernating, tucked between asteroids, inside moons, beneath ice rings. Their AIs screamed awake, weapons lit with heat older than the Empire itself. And suddenly, it wasn't a fleet. It was a trap. The first strike was not a beam. It was silence, a frequency pulse, ancient, raw, directly into the minds of the Imperial crew. Soldiers fell screaming, neural implants frying from the inside. Ship systems shut down. Communications dropped dead. And then the second strike came. Rail spikes, thermobaric missiles, plasma charges too fast to dodge. Empire ships broke formation. The Hollow Prince fired back, unleashing a black hole mine at Ashmaker, an old battleship built for siege. The gravity well consumed it whole, but not before Ashmaker transmitted coordinates, directly into the moon. Leviathan woke up like a god tearing free from a tomb. Its hull ripped through layers of stone and ice, rising like a mountain with engines. It was not sleek. It was brutal, misshapen, built from madness. Its main cannon wasn't a weapon. It was a singularity generator, designed to rewrite physics in a straight line. Harren stood on the bridge, breathless. The AI whispered, "Command accepted." He pointed toward Hollow Prince. "End them." The cannon fired. It didn't launch a beam. It launched an absence, a core of gravitational collapse that ate everything in its path. The Hollow Prince tried to retreat. It couldn't. Space around it bent. Time stalled. Lights flickered. And then the Empire's strongest ship folded in on itself. Gone. Not even wreckage remained. Harren watched the field. Empire ships scattered. Some surrendered. Most ran. And the galaxy watched in awe, because for the first time in centuries the Empire had bled, and Earth had drawn the blade. In the days that followed the destruction of the Hollow Prince, a silence fell over the core systems of the Aegean Empire, a silence more terrifying than war drums, the kind of silence that settles after a predator's kill, while others in the forest stare from the shadows, and realize they're no longer at the top of the food chain. The Empire had never lost a super dreadnought before. Not in recorded history. Certainly not to humans. And never like that. No wreckage, no survivors. Just a hole in space where the pride of the fleet had been, and the memory of a cannon that erased existence. Civilian chatter networks boiled with rumor. The military tried to suppress the footage, but the data had already been fragmented across too many systems, too many rebel hands. Clips were cut, looped, slowed down, dissected, and reassembled. A million variations, but the ending was always the same. The Leviathan, an ancient, monstrous warship forged before the Empire's first breath, emerging from beneath a dead moon and folding a dreadnought into oblivion. That moment changed everything, not just for the Empire, for the galaxy. In the industrial moons of the Lorenthi Reach, a weapons contractor named Darnik Joss watched the recording for the 17th time, hands trembling over his console. He was a man who built guns for the Empire, manufactured death for credits and favors. But now he couldn't stop sweating. His factories had armed the Hallow Prince, and none of it had mattered. He opened a private channel, low-level encryption, cloaked network. "This is Joss," he whispered, "sending resources to Earthfleet. No more denials, no more bids. Just tell Admiral Heron we're done playing both sides." He terminated the signal and immediately ordered 500 million tons of alloy rerouted to unregistered coordinates near the Perseus Veil. He wasn't the only one. Within a week, 17 high-ranking officers defected from the Imperial Navy. Some ran. Others turned entire ships around mid-patrol. One captain detonated his own cruiser rather than allow it to be used against Earthfleet forces. Most didn't say why they defected, but one lieutenant left a message behind. "We're not fighting rebels anymore. We're fighting history, and history just woke up angry." On Morning Star, Admiral Heron sat alone in his quarters, watching old Earth videos, fragments of culture pieced together by AI from corrupted archives, children playing on beaches, news reports from before the cleansing, a wedding in what used to be California, laughter, music, chaos, color, life, the kind that didn't fit inside the Empire's sterilized idea of humanity. He couldn't remember the smell of oceans anymore, or the sound of wind, but he remembered rage, and now the Empire felt it too. The door chimed. One of the command drones entered, humming softly, carrying a tablet with tactical reports and ship diagnostics. But Heron waved it away. "Forget the numbers," he muttered. "Just tell me what's broken." The drone paused. "Half our ships require hull restoration. 6 are without backup reactors. Ammunition reserves critical. Energy synthesis under 70%. AI latency increased due to core strain." In short, they were bleeding. They had won battles, yes, but they weren't infinite. The fleet was old, some of the ships barely held together by ancient welds and vengeance. The Empire was rattled, but not yet broken. And they would come back stronger, angrier, smarter, especially now. Heron leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Has the Leviathan's core stabilized?" The drone's red eyes blinked. "Temporarily. Firing the singularity cannon again within the next rotation risks collapse. Full recharge requires 6 cycles." 6 days. Heron exhaled slowly. "So we've got a god, but it needs to sleep." He stood, brushing dust from his jacket. "Then we hold the line. We don't chase. We make them come to us." But the Empire wasn't planning a direct assault. Not yet. They'd learned. In a sealed bunker beneath the imperial capital of Agira Prime, 3 remaining war generals, 3 High Council members, and the Empress herself gathered in a room that had been silent for 100 years. No communications, no surveillance, no drones, just flesh, blood, and fear. General Helvik stood before a darkened screen, arms behind his back. "Leviathan is real," he began. "Its weaponry is beyond any countermeasure we possess. Our scientists believe the core is partially sentient, maybe even interdimensional." The room murmured. Prin, always the political dog, spat. "Then what do you propose? Send prayers?" Halvek smiled without warmth. "Number, we break them the way all enemies are broken." He clicked the screen. The lights revealed a list of names, not ships, not admirals, bloodlines, descendants, survivors, scattered remnants of those who once fought in the Earth Fleet and fled after the fall. Some had changed their names. Some didn't even know their heritage. Some were children. "Project Glassheart," Halvek said quietly. "We round them up. We use them. We bait Heron, or we burn them and make him watch." The Empress gave no expression. Then she nodded. "Do it." 2 days later, across 57 systems, Imperial Black Ops units began abducting civilians without warning. They took teachers, farmers, mechanics, teenagers, old men who hadn't left their homes in decades. No trials, no broadcasts, just silence. But Earthfleet had ears. On a mining colony in Dethra, an old man named Bren Callis watched his neighbors being dragged into dropships. He'd hidden for years, claimed to be from Titan, but the moment the stormtroopers came for his granddaughter, he knew. They knew who he really was. He tried to fight. They shot him twice in the stomach. But his last breath wasn't wasted. A boy hidden in the vents carried a message chip to a smuggler outpost 12 hours later. The message reached Morning Star within the day. Harren didn't rage. He didn't scream. He simply stood before the command console and stared. Play it again. The footage looped. Stormtroopers dragging civilians. A girl no older than 15, kicking and crying. Her name, Freya Callis. Her DNA had Earthfleet officer markers, one of Heron's own bloodlines. When the message ended, Heron turned. "Recall every ship." The AI hesitated. "We are holding strategic positions. Every ship." He stepped forward. "We've played the old game long enough. Tactics, positioning, surgical strikes." His voice grew colder. "If they want to use our blood against us, then let them understand what we are without it." He activated the Leviathan core. No more shadows, no more ghosts, no more warnings. The fleet shimmered across the stars, gathering like a storm. "From this point on, we burn everything between us and those prisoners." The drones hummed. The AI offered a single word. "Confirmed." In the Imperial stronghold of Theris Prime, where the prisoners were held, the sky cracked open before the evacuation order even reached the top. It wasn't just Morning Star that came. It was the entire Earthfleet armada. 37 vessels, 10 deep strike platforms, hundreds of unmanned sub-assault drones. And at the center, Leviathan, its singularity cannon glowing like a sun turned inside out. The final battle had not yet begun, but it would. And this time, there would be no negotiation, no surrender, no survivors. Theris Prime had once been a fortress, a world carved into stone and steel, surrounded by 7 orbital defense rings, manned by 3 full battalions of the Empire's elite. It was where prisoners disappeared, interrogations were never questioned, and secrets were buried in bunkers so deep even their architects forgot them. It wasn't built to withstand gods. The moment Leviathan emerged from warp, time felt like it slowed. The beast ship didn't roar, it hummed, a vibration that tore through the fabric of space itself. Its wake dragged sparks through orbit like ghost trails. Behind it, the rest of the Earthfleet armada fanned out, blocking any hope of retreat. Inside Theris Command, General Dorian Cray stood frozen in front of the tactical screen, fingers trembling as the displays updated. Ship ID after ship ID appearing. Ashmaker, Flesh Reaper, Penance of Fire, Echo of Dust. Each one a name pulled from Imperial war briefings marked obsolete, destroyed, legendary. "How the hell are they all here?" a lieutenant whispered. Cray didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Leviathan. He'd heard stories. Everyone had. But to see it, really see it, was like watching the universe point a finger of judgment straight at your chest. It looked wrong, like something that had no business existing in this reality. Its main cannon wasn't just active. It was pulsing like a heart, each beat stronger, louder, deeper. "Sir, we're getting an open signal." Cray swallowed. "Put it through." The screen flickered. Admiral Heron's face appeared. Aging, tired, silent. For 5 seconds, he said nothing. Then came the voice. Not shouting, not dramatic. Just flat. Final. "You have our blood. You were warned. There are no more chances." Cray moved to speak, to stall, to plead, anything, but the transmission cut before he could say a word. And then, the Earth fleet moved. The assault began with Ashmaker. The battleship's twin railguns, dormant for decades, screamed back to life and launched 2 spikes the size of skyscrapers into the upper defense ring. The impact tore through the orbital shields like wet paper, reducing the station's center to vapor. Pennants of fire followed with a barrage of AI-guided kinetic warheads, too fast for point defense turrets to track. Each one hit with the force of an extinction event. The second ring collapsed in under 90 seconds. The remaining 5 rings turned their guns inward, desperate, reckless, blind. They managed to bring down 1 Earth Fleet frigate, Veilbreaker, before Flesh Reaper counterattacked, unleashing its drone swarms. Each drone was small, agile, and programmed to dive straight into engine cores, reactor vents, or crew decks, detonating from within. It wasn't a battle. It was a harvest. On the surface of Theris Prime, the prison bunkers began lockdown procedures. High-voltage gates slammed shut. Cell walls thickened with magnetic reinforcement. Armored guards dragged detainees into reinforced vaults designed to survive orbital strikes. Freya Callis was among them, wrists bound, eyes wide. She didn't know why they'd taken her. She only knew that ever since they'd drawn her blood, the officers treated her differently. Not like a prisoner, like a trophy. Now, in the depths of Bunker 9, she sat in a chamber with 12 others, mostly humans. Some old, some just children. One woman rocked silently in the corner, repeating a name under her breath. Then, through the ceiling vents, they heard it. A deep vibration. A heartbeat that didn't come from any living creature. Leviathan descended through the atmosphere without resistance. The orbital fleet was gone. Ground-to-air defenses tried to lock, but their systems jammed, overloaded by frequencies they couldn't decipher. Every missile veered off course. Every turret misfired. And then the Singularity cannon charged. From orbit, it looked like the sky was being pierced by a god's finger. The beam didn't hit a single building. It hit the bedrock beneath the prison facility. It unmade it. The shockwave flipped buildings like playing cards. Entire blocks were lifted into the air before crashing down like dead leaves. Fire bloomed without flame, compression heat cooking the soil into black glass. And from the center of it all, Leviathan rose again. Nothing had survived. Except the bunkers. Admiral Heron stood on the Morning Star's bridge, arms folded, eyes on the sensor readout. "Penetration successful?" "Affirmative," the AI answered. "Bunkers are intact. Thermal signatures suggest prisoners remain alive. Surface resistance, minimal." "Then we go in." A squad of dropships peeled off from the main fleet, descending into the wreckage. Each one carried Earth Fleet retrieval units, AI-assisted operatives fused with old human instincts and newer machine reflexes. Not talkers, not negotiators, hunters. Inside Bunker 9, the ground shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. The guards screamed at each other, trying to re-establish uplinks. Their comms hissed static. Then the outer blast doors turned red. Freya clutched the bench, breathing fast. An officer shouted, "Reinforce that door!" Too late. With a thunderclap, the steel exploded inward, and 3 figures stepped through, tall, silent, armored head to toe in obsidian alloy. They didn't ask who was who. They scanned DNA from across the room, cross-referenced it in seconds. Then one of them knelt before Freya. "Freya Callis," the voice said through modulated filters. "Blood of Commander Tyrell Callis, Earthfleet. Confirmed." She stared, eyes wide. "Your grandfather died sending your message." She couldn't speak. "We're here to finish it." Within minutes, all 17 prisoners were secured. And within 10, every Imperial officer on Theras Prime had been executed. Not with cruelty, with precision, with memory. Earthfleet didn't take prisoners. Not anymore. From orbit, Admiral Heron watched the last of the bunkers crumble as Leviathan withdrew its cannon and powered down. He should have felt triumph, but all he felt was hunger. Not his own. The ships. Leviathan wanted more. It had been built to end wars before they began. A last resort. A warning written in gravity and death. And now it was awake, surrounded by its siblings, breathing deep the scent of vengeance. But how much further could they go? How many more systems could they burn before they became the very thing they hated? One of the drones turned toward him. "Admiral, message from a new source." "From where?" "Unknown system. Civilian ship. Uncoded." Heron narrowed his eyes. "Put it through." The screen flickered. A man appeared. Gray hair, lined face, one eye replaced by a crude implant. He wore no uniform, just a scarf with Earthfleet insignia, faded and worn. "I'm Captain Jurian Cade," the man said. "I was part of the escape, one of the last. I've been hiding since the fall." Heron didn't blink. Cade continued. "I found something. On the edge of the rim. A vault." He leaned closer. They weren't just building Leviathan. They built others, bigger, smarter, sealed under fail-safes we couldn't crack back then. But I have the keys now. Heron stepped forward. Cade's eyes darkened. "And Admiral, one of those ships, it talks, not with code, with voice. It's sentient, and it remembers you." The signal cut. Heron stood still. His pulse didn't rise, but something else did. A feeling he hadn't tasted since he was a child, staring into the ash of a dead world. Dread. The coordinates came through within an hour. Buried in a slipstream pocket past the Skarn Rift, the location Cade had sent wasn't marked on any Imperial or Rebel star charts. It was deep space. Dead, silent, and unlit. A black corridor between galaxies. No colonies, no travel lanes. No reason for anyone to go there unless they were hiding something. Or guarding it. Admiral Heron stood on Morning Star's bridge as the fleet prepared for warp. The stars outside seemed further than usual, like they were holding their breath. "Is Cade's signature verified?" Heron asked. The AI nodded. "DNA match confirms Earthfleet Captain Registry. Tier 4 clearance. Age and voice patterns consistent with file. Subject was marked KIA during the fall of the Europa Bastion." "Then he's been hiding longer than I've been alive." The drone to his right responded. "Survival likelihood during Europa's breach was calculated at less than 0.0004%. Heron stared at the coordinates on the tactical display. "Then let's see what kind of miracle has been waiting for us." The journey to the vault took 9 hours. The fleet moved in silence, only a skeleton crew awake across most ships. Systems were running cold, weapons dormant, energy signatures dimmed. Heron didn't want to be seen, not by the Empire, not by anything else. The closer they got to the vault, the stranger things became. Scanners began to fail. Chronometers drifted out of sync. Small malfunctions popped up across ships. Airlock seals hissed without cause. Lights flickered in sequence like Morse code no one could translate. Hull cameras showed star patterns that didn't match any known sector. And then Leviathan, the one ship that never glitched, powered down its weapons unprompted. Harren stood at his console, staring at the data. "What is this place?" The AI replied, "We are inside a quantum distortion field, artificially maintained, shielded from space-time indexing. Likely origin, Earth Fleet Archive Division." So a memory cage. "Yes, Admiral." Harren rubbed his jaw. He had read about Earth Fleet's most classified projects. In the final months before Earth's fall, the Defense Coalition poured everything into contingency measures. One of them, Project Enoch, was rumored to involve conscious warships, not AIs, not code. Something alive, something hybridized, something they hadn't dared unleash. And if Cade was right, one of those things had survived. They dropped out of warp into complete blackness. The vault sat inside a gravity well so deep light couldn't escape it. Only when Earthfleet scanners resynced did the structure take shape, a massive octagonal facility built into the shell of a collapsed moon. Defensive satellites drifted around it, long dead but still intact, their barrels pointed toward empty space. Cade's ship, a rusted civilian hauler called Amber Ghost, was docked at the entrance bay. As Harren's shuttle approached, the bay doors opened slowly, groaning like old lungs pulling in dust after centuries of stillness. They stepped inside. Jurian Cade was waiting. His body had aged. No doubt he'd extended his life using black market treatments and cold sleep protocols. But his voice still carried command. He gave a faint smile as Harren approached. "You made it." "I don't follow breadcrumbs for just anyone," Harren said. Cade nodded, then turned towards the corridor. "This way." They walked in silence through the facility's dimly lit halls. Everything was metal, rusted but solid, laced with exposed wiring. There were no drones, no guards, no welcoming messages, just silence and old shadows. "This was a last-ditch fallback site," Cade said. "Not just a vault, a laboratory." When Earthfleet realized the war was lost, they didn't just hide weapons. They hid ideas, forbidden ones. He stopped at a sealed blast door. This is what they feared most. He keyed a genetic lock. The door hissed open. Inside was a chamber the size of a stadium. In the center, suspended in a web of energy, was a ship. Sleek. Black. Built from alloy Harren didn't recognize. Its curves were unnatural, organic almost. The front hull opened into a maw lined with glowing filaments like veins. The bridge had no windows, no external guns, no engine ports. It breathed. Cade stared at it with something close to awe. They called it Nyx, designed to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlive any fleet ever conceived. Its core isn't AI, it's hybridized consciousness. "Human?" Harren asked, voice low. "Yes," Cade said. "Willing donors, volunteers, the terminally ill, war heroes, scientists. Their minds were transferred, fused into Nyx's core. She doesn't run the ship. She is the ship." Harren stepped closer. The room seemed to grow colder as he approached. "And she knows who you are," Cade added. The chamber pulsed, not the lights, the air itself. A low hum resonated in Harren's bones. The ship's front sensors, if that's what they were, turned toward him slowly. Then a voice, not through speakers, in his head. "You're late." Harren's spine straightened. His pulse spiked. He didn't respond aloud. The voice continued, calm and slow. Feminine, but not soft. "They told me you were dead. All of you." But I heard the sky rip open last week. I felt Leviathan wake up. I remembered what fire sounds like. Harren found his voice. You're Nyx? I'm what's left of them. The ones who wouldn't surrender. The ones who stayed behind when the last transports fled. The ones who said, bury me inside the machine and let me dream of fire. He took a breath. We need you. I know. The lights above flickered as Nyx powered up. The cables feeding into her core pulled away. Shields fell. Energy readings spiked. You want to finish what we started? Yes, Harren said. Then let me show you the rest of us. A panel opened behind the ship, revealing a hidden passage that led deeper into the moon. Harren and Cade followed it, passing rows of sealed pods, each one marked with Earthfleet insignia and status lights. Hundreds, possibly thousands. Cade gestured. Each one holds a mind, a voice, a person, stored in stasis, waiting for a signal. What kind of signal? Harren asked. The end of silence. Back aboard Morning Star, the Earthfleet waited. The other ships had begun to experience interference, whispers in static, sensor ghosts, flickers of energy moving through the fleet. Some of the AIs grew quiet, others grew agitated. Leviathan's core dimmed briefly, then roared back to life. When Harren returned, the entire bridge felt different, tense, on edge. He spoke 3 words to the command AI. Prepare for integration. The AI hesitated. Warning. Integration with Nyx may destabilize existing command hierarchy. I know, Harren said. This will change everything. Then it's working. Hours later, Nyx emerged into space. She didn't fly like the others. She moved through reality, slicing across distances without warp trails. Gravity bent around her hull like it didn't want to touch her. She took point in the formation. And across the fleet, the other ships responded. Even Leviathan, their weapons synced, engines recalibrated, firing solutions merged into a unified grid, one voice, one mind. Earthfleet wasn't a fleet anymore. It was a consciousness. Inside the command chamber, Harren sat alone. Nyx spoke again, this time aloud, her voice echoing through the steel like a storm behind a whisper. The Empire is still building. They have new weapons, ones they copied from our own dead. I know, Harren replied. I want to hit them before they finish. Nyx paused. There's one more vault. Harren turned sharply. Where? Under the dead ring of Thalos, buried in glass. They sealed it when the Empire took the moons. But we left something behind. What? The room grew cold. Nyx's voice dropped. Something we were afraid to use. Not a ship. A seed. A virus for stars. A memory that burns systems from the inside out. If we deploy it, the Empire dies in 1 generation. Harren froze. You're saying we can erase them? Yes. He stared at the stars on the display. Quiet. Distant. Watching. He clenched his fist. Take us to Thalos. The stars over Thalos didn't blink. They just watched, cold and unfeeling, as Earthfleet arrived like a dark tide pouring into the forgotten edges of the galaxy. The Empire had turned the Thalos ring into a graveyard 100 years ago. After the moons rebelled, after the last screams went silent under orbital fire. They called it cleansed, a dead system, no value, no return. But they hadn't touched the core. They hadn't touched the vault buried under the glass crust of Thalos 9. Because even the Empire feared what Earthfleet left there. The seed. A weapon born from desperation. A living virus encoded in quantum fragments, meant to infect stars, spread through solar winds, and rewrite the DNA of light itself. Theoretically, once released, it could infect entire systems within days. It didn't destroy worlds. It erased memory, made systems forget how to sustain life. Atomic laws broke down. Planets stopped spinning. Suns refused to burn. a weapon that could rewrite creation by corrupting its instructions. Nyx led the fleet through the outer rim. Her hull shimmered with static light, her voice a storm that passed through the comms like a ghost whispering through steel. "We're close." Heron stood at the forward observation deck of Morning Star, staring at the glass ring of Thalos 9. Beneath it lay humanity's final sin. A weapon so dangerous Earthfleet hadn't dared to use it, not even when Earth burned. But now the Empire had kidnapped their blood, killed their survivors, defiled their legacy. Now, maybe the time had come. "Status?" Heron asked. The command AI responded calmly. "Surface resistance, none. Planet uninhabited. Radiation levels stable. Vault signature detected 15,000 meters beneath glacial crust. Energy pulse consistent with seed containment. Drill through." A moment passed. Then the drill ships dropped like fangs from the sky. On the surface of Thalos 9, the ice boiled as lasers carved through it. Beneath, steel claws dug through ancient stone and frozen crystal. The Earthfleet retrieval team moved fast. No hesitation, no second guesses. At the 14,500-meter mark, the drill struck something hard. Not metal, not rock. Something alive. It pulsed once, then again. And then it opened. The vault wasn't a chamber. It was a chrysalis, built around the seed like flesh around a heart. Inside floated a sphere the size of a cruiser's bridge, suspended in null gravity. No seams, no lights. Just a black, pulsing core that seemed to drink in energy. The retrieval unit sent its signal. Aboard Morning Star, Nyx's voice returned. "It's active." Heron stood still. His jaw tight, his hands behind his back. A soldier at war with something far deeper than the Empire, his own morality. "We launch it," he said finally. "How long until it spreads?" Nyx didn't hesitate. 2 standard days. After that, irreversible. Galactic communication networks will collapse within a week. Star cores will mutate. Entire sectors will fall dark. The Empire will die. But so will others. He turned toward the stars on the screen. Billions of lives. Civilians. Innocents. Even rebels. Whole systems that didn't know the war existed. He clenched his fists. "All we've done, all we've fought for, we release this, and we're no better than them." "They'll never stop coming," Nyx replied. "If we cripple them, they'll rebuild. If we burn their ships, they'll draft new ones. But if we end the knowledge of war itself, there'll be nothing left to fight with." A silence fell between them. Then Nyx added something else. "The seed is conscious, Admiral. Not like me, not like the fleet. It doesn't obey. It hungers." Heron blinked. "What?" "It was never just code. It's what we called a logic strain. It infects thought before it infects matter. It was made to feed on command chains. The more authority a system has, the faster it falls." So that was the final price. Not just systems, not just the Empire, but the concept of power itself. Heron whispered, "It would end everything." "Yes." He walked toward the edge of the command deck. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Older, harder, tired. A man who had burned worlds, crushed fleets, stood against history and spat in its face. But now the greatest weapon in human history waited for his command. He closed his eyes and remembered Earth, his mother's hands, his brother's laughter, the roar of falling fire, the silence after. Then he whispered, "Bring me Freya Callis." In the medical bay of Morning Star, Freya stood in a clean uniform now, Earthfleet gray, the insignia stitched at the collar. Her face was pale, but her eyes held something sharper than fear. Clarity. She saluted when Heron entered. He waved it away. "You're not enlisted?" "Yet," she replied. He studied her. "You know what we found?" She nodded. The weapon. He paused. You think we should use it? She didn't blink. I think the Empire should never rise again. And if the stars die with them? She stared at him. My grandfather said something before they killed him. He said, the future belongs to whoever wants it badly enough to burn everything that came before it. Harren nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked back to the core. The fleet aligned in formation above Thalos 9. All systems green, all weapons primed. The seed rose from the surface, suspended by energy beams. Its core pulsed faster now, sensing freedom. A hunger wrapped in light. Harren stood at the final command console. One button. One touch. That was all it would take. Behind him, Nick spoke one last time. Once it begins, I can't stop it. It will feed on data, on memory, on war itself. What remains may not even remember what was lost. He touched the console. Paused. His finger hovered. He saw Earth. He saw its death. He saw his fleet, the rebels, the defectors, the survivors. He saw what they'd done. Then, he pulled his hand back. No, he said. Nix was silent. I won't become what I hate, Harren muttered. Not for revenge, not even for justice. He turned. We fight with fire, not with extinction. He looked at the AI. Seal the seed back inside the vault. Lock it, bury it again, then set a self-destruct protocol. Nix paused. Confirmed. A wave of relief, or was it grief, passed through the ship, and the seed screamed, not aloud, inside them. A psychic wail that made the hulls vibrate. The fleet felt it, and still, Harren stood. Do it, he ordered. The vault closed. The seed was sealed. The surface of Thalos 9 turned to glass again as Leviathan fired one final blast, melting the crust shut. What lay beneath would stay buried. Forever. The fleet turned. The war was not over, but something inside it had changed. They would fight. Yes, and they would burn every last ship the Empire sent after them. But they would remember this moment, not as a refusal to destroy, but as a choice to remain human. Weeks later, in the ruins of a forgotten Empire outpost, a broadcast echoed across the stars. Admiral Harren's voice, raw, clear. We are Earthfleet. We do not forget. We do not forgive, but we do not erase the stars. We earn them back. And across the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, people began to believe again.